Do you own or want to own a Canon RF mount camera, a Sony E mount camera, a Nikon Z mount camera, or an L mount Alliance camera? Well, you may want to look at the video that I am showing to your faces right now, because we're going to talk about a brand new lens, a lens with almost no focus breathing, a lens with almost no chromatic aberration, no longitudinal chromatic aberration, and which is excellent at distortion. Now, why is distortion important? Because this is actually a full frame ultra wide lens, the Pergear 14mm f2.8, and right now in January of 2023 you can get this lens for $254, an ultra wide f2.8 for $254, and I am sucking in my gut so hard right now. Let's talk about this lens. I'm going to switch back to APS-C mode right now because you can see way too much of my studio. Plus, you know, I am holding it together as best I can. There we go, that's a lot better. You can no longer see the consequences of my slovenly lifestyle. So big shout out to Pergear for sending this guy over. I really appreciate it. I had a lot of fun testing out this lens. And before I get into the tests, in fact, let's talk a little bit about the lens and the build quality. Now, this is an all manual lens, of course, at less than $300. This ultra wide lens, of course, you would expect it to be manual. If you want an autofocus lens at this focal length, you're going to have to pay much more than that. But I don't mind like this. I'm using it right here on APS-C mode in the studio, and I just touch the lens right here, touching it again, so I can just look at my monitor, focus until I see some peaking, and there you go. Bob is your uncle. And now this thing is built fantastically. I love the build quality. There is one problem I have with the build quality. I'll talk about that at the end of the build quality section, but it's an all metal lens. Even the lens hood is metal, and it has an 82mm filter thread, which is great because you can still put filters on this guy even though it is an ultra wide lens. A lot of times with the ultra wide lenses, the lens that just bulges out and you can't stick a filter on. This guy you can. It has an aperture ring that goes from f2.8 to f22, and it is nice and clicky, which I always appreciate. I love that tactile feel of the clicky lens, at least here on the Sony E mount version. It has an angle of view of 114 degrees, and it has a 90-degree focus throw, and it's a nice, smooth focus ring, which I like very much. Now, the thing that I don't like about the lens, well, I didn't like, was that it was a bit stiff to put on my lens mount. After I did it a couple of times, I was a little bit nervous at first. I'm like, it's not clicking in there. But after I did it a couple of times, it loosened up. Now it fits just like the rest of my lenses. But I did have that initial moment where I felt like it was a little too tight for the lens mount. But other than that, I have loved the build quality, and it's not that heavy. It's 500 grams. So to have an ultra-wide 14mm lens that is 500 grams, all metal build quality, certainly that is pretty acceptable. And before I get into the positives and negatives, this wide lens, of course, I'm going to take it out vlogging. I got to vlog my gorgeous face with a wide-angle lens, so let's go out into the city and hopefully see no people. So I'm vlogging here on another picturesque day in Ontario in January. I mean, look at that gray sky. Isn't that lovely? It's just pure white. In case you think it's the dynamic range of the camera, it's not. It's just a white, ugly sky. But let's look at something not ugly. Me. Here's what I did is I just, used the manual focus, turned on peaking, and then just focused it here on my pretty eyes. And here we have a nice, comfortable focal length here. I'm touching the lens, so you see a nice bit of wide field of view. Now, I set the active steady shot on the A7 IV to 14mm, so hopefully that will compensate for some of the wobble, because you're going to get these wide angle lenses when you try to use stabilization, especially the electronic stabilization in the cameras there, or even any stabilization. You're going to get a little bit of wobble on these very wide angle lenses. So we're going to see how the A7 IV does with this. But I gotta say, this is pretty easy. Just focus very close to you, have this nice wide field of view. You're not getting a ton of depth of field with such a wide angle lens at an f2.8, but you know what? This is acceptable. I think this could make a fine vlogging lens for the full frame A7 IV. So clearly this is a lens that you can use for vlogging, not a problem at all. Set your focus peaking, just focus on yourself, walk around, talk your nonsense. But who is this lens for besides the self-indulgent vloggers like myself? Well, I think that real estate videographers and photographers would definitely benefit from this lens. If you're getting into real estate photography or videography, you're definitely going to want a wide angle lens. It makes the little places look bigger. You know, you're trying to sell a 500 square foot condo in Toronto for $2.2 million, which people like to do, then you're going to want to make that tiny little crappy space look nice and huge, and that is what this lens can do for you. You put it on a gimbal, you know, you go around that little condo. Oh, here is the toilet. Oh, it is lovely. I'm sure you real estate people will do a better job than I would selling the anyway, real estate photographers, videographers, also people who like to photograph architecture or videography of architecture as well. And this lens is great for that because there is very little distortion on the ends of it. It's great. The lines, they stay straight. So that, I think that is the biggest strength of this lens, to be such a wide angle and also not distort the lines on the side. Very impressive that it can do that. Speaking of impressive, there is very little chromatic aberration or longitudinal chromatic aberration. I could not find much at all in the tests that I did. And speaking of not finding something, focus breathing. There is virtually no focus breathing in this lens. If you focus from close up to infinity, you aren't going to see the screen move or wobble at all, and that is great if you want to do, you know, focus stacking in post of photography, or if you want to do long focus pulls. This lens will do you great. That's another group of people who may want to use this lens, is landscape photographers. Now there is a caveat with the landscape photographers, and let's just talk about the negatives right now, because one of the negatives is the lens flare. It has a very odd lens flare at the lower f-stop. So at f2.8, if you shine a bright light directly into the lens like the sun, you will get a strange orange ring all the way around, and that is definitely unsightly unless, you know, you're into that. But the thing is, that disappears at about f4 in my tests. So normally when you're shooting landscape photography, you're not shooting at f2.8, you're shooting well above f4, so that is probably not going to be an issue for you, but it's something to be aware of if you want to shoot with direct sunlight. If you want to shoot bright objects going into the lens and you want to shoot at f2.8, you're going to see some weird lens flares. Corner softness, again, at the lower f numbers. If you want sharp corner to corner and you plan to shoot at f2.8, then you are going to see some majorly soft corners. Once again, if you're shooting, you know, architecture, things like that, you're generally shooting at like f8, f9, so the corners get much sharper at those f-stops. But if you're down at the f2.8, you're going to see some mushy corners. The center stays pretty sharp from f2.8 right up to about f16, where diffraction kicks in, but the center is always pretty sharp, but the corners soft at the lower f numbers. So again, you want to shoot this at higher f numbers if you want all of the sharpness all of the way through. But I mean, that is it for the negatives. And when you have a 14mm f2.8 lens for less than $300, of course you're going to have some compromises, and depending on what you are using this lens for, you may not have to worry about the things that are compromises. Now, if you're going to use this focal length big time, you know, you're going to use it for paid work all the time, and it's going to be one of your main lenses, then I would suggest you look at the Sony 14mm f1.8 G Master, but that's a $2,100 lens compared to this thing, which is less than $300. But you're going to get much better optical performance out of the G Master, obviously, and you're going to get autofocus as well. But for those of you who are on a budget, if you want to do real estate on a budget, stuff like that, then, you know, maybe this is something to get into, or you're getting into astrophotography, or you think maybe I need an ultra wide lens, but I don't need one all the time. You can take this little 500-gram lens in your bag. It's not going to break the bank, and you always have it there when you need it. As I am proving right now, you can use it as a studio lens. So I'm just on APS-C mode here on my A7 IV. I used it out vlogging in full frame mode. I mean, you know, the lens can be extremely useful for you. Useful? Useful for you. Is it perfect? No, but you know, other than me, nothing in life is perfect. And like I said at the beginning, if you want to use the 15% discount code, I will put that in the description below. I will also put down my affiliate links because I got to get stinking rich. Obviously, I just spent a bunch of money Christmas time on other people, buying gifts for other people. So I would like to make some money back, please. I will put affiliate links down below, and I will give you a discount code. Well, it's Pergear giving you the discount code, but you know, it's going through me, so technically I'm giving it to you. And you just type that in at checkout. When you do the checkout at Amazon, then you type in that code, and there you go. 15% off already. From a $299 lens, it goes down to $254. So hopefully you see this before the end of January 2023. If not, $299 is still a very good value for a lens that can do this stuff, if this is the stuff that you want a lens to do. So anyway, write down in the comments below if you use ultra-wide lenses. If so, which ones do you use? And I will be sure to ignore your comments and let you guys fight amongst yourselves down there while I eat grapes like some kind of, you know, Roman emperor, I suppose. Anyway, I'm rambling. I'm going to go now. Thanks for watching this. We'll talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.